Let's say there's a network security breach and the network engineer feels like it's his responsibility, like he's going to feel like he messed up, and they'll be looking to him to restore the services back. So then in the process of trying to just make sure the service is back up and running, he just deletes everything that may be malware and then restores the system so the system can be back up in 1 hour to meet up with the MTR, mean time to recovery. So because he wants to meet up with a set time for recovery, he wipes the server clean. So then he restores the operating system from the image and then everything is back up and running in 1 hour. Yes, customers may be happy, your boss may be happy that service is back up. But with good digital forensics knowledge and practices, you are able to know how to preserve evidence even in the process of disaster recovery or incident recovery. When you're investigating, even as a cybersecurity expert, if you're not doing forensics, even as a penetration tester, SOC analyst, if you come across certain malware or potential evidence, don't just treat it carelessly. Treat it as if it may lead to a court case, because you don't want to destroy evidence in the process of recovery. If in the workplace you're not allowed to watch certain kind of content, and they want to investigate if the person did, the person can say they did not and delete all their computer history. But this is the beauty of forensic tools, because even though you've deleted your history from the browser, we've got forensic tools that can bring back everything you deleted. Because when you delete a file, it does not go out of your system just like that. It's still on your system somewhere. It's just your operating system has marked that space as available for a new file. What does digital forensics have to do with incident response and business continuity or disaster recovery? Why is digital forensics mentioned in the same sentence or under the same topic as incident response or disaster recovery? Digital forensics would help us investigate. And when you're investigating, even as a cybersecurity expert, if you're not doing forensics, even as a penetration tester, SOC analyst, if you come across certain malware or potential evidence, don't just treat it carelessly. Treat it as if it may lead to a court case, because you don't want to destroy evidence in the process of recovery. Because of the pressure sometimes of incidents or when they happen. Let's say there's a network security breach and the network engineer feels like it's his responsibility, like he's going to feel like he messed up, and they'll be looking to him to restore the services back. So then in the process of trying to just make sure the service is back up and running, he just deletes everything that may be malware and then restores the system so the system can be back up in 1 hour to meet up with the MTR, mean time to recovery, which is the maximum time you can be down for before business should return to a normal operation. But yeah, there's one that goes back, which is how far back you need to restore data. And there's one that goes forward, which is how much time forward do we have to restore back to this point. So because it wants to meet up with a set time for recovery, it wipes the server clean. So then it restores the operating system from the image and then everything is back up and running in 1 hour. Yes, customers may be happy, your boss may be happy that service is back up. People may never notice depending on how much time it took you to restore that particular server or that network device. But what you may have done in that process is delete evidence. So you restored the service, but how would you prevent it in future? Do you know what caused it? Do you know how it entered? Do you know how it happened? No, you don't know all these things. And then the evidence that you should have investigated, that would have given you more information, you've also deleted it because you were eager to restore service. But with good digital forensics knowledge and practices, you are able to know how to preserve evidence even in the process of disaster recovery. Because that evidence you're protecting or preserving may teach you or help you know how to prevent a reoccurrence of that incident in future. Also, it can let you know who or what is responsible in case it leads to a criminal case. But if you delete all that evidence or you tamper with it in a way that is not forensically sound, that evidence is not going to be admissible in court. So even if it's a competitor that's tried to infect your system and there's evidence that shows that, but you have tampered with it because you did not handle your disaster recovery or incident response in a forensically sound manner, you have jeopardized the chances of that leading to a court case, or that evidence successfully being admitted into the court because it's no longer a reliable piece of evidence. So always treat evidence as if it may lead to a court case. And that's where digital forensics come in. It's a scientific method to help you know what happened, how it happened, potentially who is responsible or what is responsible, where it's come from, and the behavior, just like that. Now, digital forensics is about, first of all, identifying the evidence, finding and collecting the evidence. Why is there identifying and then finding after identifying? You identify your evidence, meaning it's not everything you collect. Which ones are the most crucial or most relevant to this case? Similar to cybersecurity, where you categorize and prioritize your assets and you don't just prioritize everything as critical, it's not possible. Some would be the most crucial to your business to keep your business afloat. Those ones are the critical. Then you have the high or medium and low and so on like that. If this was a crime scene and there are like 5 systems here right now, do I need to collect this monitor if I don't need it and it's not storing any information? Yeah, so that's me identifying my evidence first of all. Do I need to take the projector? Do I need to take the screen? Do you get what I mean? That's identifying which ones are the most crucial. Now, if I see something like this laptop, do I need to take it? Yes, a phone. So that is you identifying evidence or evidence sources. Then finding and collected is now where you take them and package them properly in a way that will mitigate or minimize the chances of contamination. So when you're collecting it, you don't want to tamper with it. And that leads to the preservation of the evidence. And then this part, you're talking about things like hashing, if it's digital evidence, right? Chain of custody. If it's evidence that has to do with hard disks, you want to make sure you're not putting it near a magnet or near a speaker, because speakers have magnets and magnets can mess with the storage of the hard disk. It can mess with the data inside. And as a matter of fact, one of the reliable methods of deleting data is degaussing. And do you know what degaussing is? It's using heavy magnets to wipe hard disks. So what you're doing when you're putting hard disk, which is supposed to be evidence, you're putting in near a speaker, what you're basically doing is similar to degaussing, which is you're unintentionally messing with the data or unintentionally wiping data potentially from the hard disk, rendering the evidence inadmissible in court. So if that hard disk had to do with a very serious case of a murder, abuse, or something that has to do with life, that simple mistake you made may jeopardize that case, and the guilty person will go back to the street because the evidence that could have put them in jail has now been messed with or has been tampered with and therefore inadmissible. You could also make an innocent person go to jail because the evidence that could have exonerated them has also been tampered with. So therefore they have to rely on the one that has been presented before. There's no new evidence. So even if that hard disk contains potential data that could make the person appear innocent, but there's no way to recover it, or even if there's a way to recover it, but there's evidence to prove that that hard disk has been tampered with, it is no longer admissible in court. You would have to look for another one or another way to get that data in a reliable manner or in a forensically sound manner. So that's preservation. Analysis is where you do your investigation. You use different tools. You can use tools like EnCase. You can use tools like autopsy, oxygen, magnet forensics. Depending on the kind of evidence, you can use Wireshark. You can use TCP stream. You can use T-Shark. There are lots of options of forensic tools you can use, depending on the kind of case you're working on. Reporting is where you report the evidence, of course, everything you found. You don't add what you did not see and don't state what you did not find. You report what you found, how you found it, the state you found it, the condition, everything, the properties, the metadata. Don't add evidence that is irrelevant. Just add everything you found related to the case. You can use digital forensics to assist in incident response or disaster recovery. It can also help you in law enforcement investigations and checking for compliance with law or set policy. But in terms of digital forensics, how can you use digital forensics to check for compliance? So if you're not supposed to plug in external devices to your work laptop, for example, and you want to see if somebody did, of course you can use forensic methods to reliably check if hardware was plugged in or if USB devices were plugged in. Because when you're doing a forensic investigation, you can reliably check the registry and see the PID or VID, which is product ID and vendor ID of hardware devices that have been plugged in. Why do you need to use forensic tools and methods to check devices that have been plugged in or check for evidence on the system when you can easily go to the app data to see the web history, or you can go to the registry to see the devices that have been plugged in or software installed? Why do you need forensic tools or methods to check this? You can tamper with it. How? It can get updated. The reason we use forensic tools and methods is because they are less likely to tamper with the evidence. Because forensic methods would include things like write blockers. That does not allow you to change anything on that system, but you can see everything going on that system. But if I don't use a write blocker and I plug in a device, even though it's a forensic tool I'm plugging in, I'm changing something on that system. In the registry, probably a driver installed, and several other things. I may be modifying something without knowing. I may be changing a registry key. anything can be happening. But if I'm using forensically sound methods, things like right blocker will be in place, then my forensic tools would collect all the evidence from every corner of the system. Some of them would also analyze them for me and put them into categories, speeding up the time of investigation. Another way we can use forensic to check for compliance is if in the workplace you're not allowed to watch certain kind of content and they want to investigate if the person did. The person can say they did not and delete all their computer history. But this is the beauty of forensic tools, because even though you've deleted your history from the browser, we've got forensic tools that can bring back everything you deleted. Even non-forensic tools sometimes can still bring back things you've deleted. Because when you delete a file, it does not go out of your system just like that. It's still on your system somewhere. It's just your operating system has marked that space as available for a new file. So until a new file is then written over it, that file that was there before in that block will still be there. And that is why there are things like partial recovery in forensics. Let's say you've got a file that is 6 bytes. If you delete that file and you then store another file that is 4 bytes alone to overwrite that space, you've still got 2 bytes from the format file that is left that can be reconstructed because you have not overwritten that one. Your operating system just marks that space as available. So when you delete your file, it's not going out of your system and going into the air. No, it's still on your system. Your operating system, your machine is just marking that space as available for another file. And then until the new file comes, then it takes up that space and then may be overwritten. But there's something called residual data, which is something that may still be left in the slack space. Sometimes data can also be picked up from the slack space on your system. And that slack space may contain information or some parts of the file that was previously in that block. Because the new file you wrote is just 6, so you can then reconstruct that using your forensic tools. So you can use forensics to then check if the person really did it, even after they delete their history, delete the file, delete the video, you can still use forensics to check.